murders. 25 of them shot in Chicago over the weekend.
Oh, man.
25. That's a lot of murders in one night, isn't it?
It is.
And border situation is absolutely out of control. There's thousands swarming across the border, and they stop them and just release them. You know?
Yeah.
Tell them you're supposed to show up in court for a entry hearing or something. No means of enforcing that. Probably 1 out of 20 of them would even bother. You know.
I've heard they don't even show up. I mean,
Yeah.
I've heard they're not even giving them court dates.
And crazy Biden, you know, that administration is just absolutely insane. There's nothing right about it.
No, it's everything wrong with.
Yeah.
There's nothing right about it.
And
you know, on the coronavirus thing, latest thing I heard was that Krispy Kreme is offering people
heard that.
donuts
get a
for
free donut if you get vaccinated. Like,
for vaccination.
worth risking your life to get a donut.
Yeah. Yeah. The lady I work with told me that today, and she's like, I just had to tell you that because that's creepy.
Well, that's just the madness of the world's sense of values is so upside down that, you know, how can they possibly make a good decision about anything?
Yeah. But, you know, it's understandable. You know, if you ever made a dumb decision because of sin, you know, to get yourself into sin when you know good and well that's not what the Lord wants.
Well, I've
You
made
can
a lot
kinda
of bad
understand it.
decisions, that's for sure.
Yeah.
They generally don't have the impact that when it does when you're the president or the State Department or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
And where it affects worldwide situations. It's just,
Not to mention falling down on the steps.
yeah.
Doesn't look good.
No.
Doesn't look good. I mean, that's
Kamala Harris is the one that's going to run the country, it looks like.
yeah.
I don't think Biden does anything other than just talk. And
Yeah.
he doesn't even have a press conference or nothing. I mean, they're probably afraid to let him stand up a bunch in front of reporters. You get make so many gaffes, you throw them in the tank, you know. But I have a feeling that their administration doesn't want him to put on a press conference because it will expose too much fraud. Keep him hidden.
Yeah. Yeah, he's already called Harris, President Harris.
Yeah.
Real subtle, too. Almost missed it.
Yeah. Well, she even slipped up today and used the word crisis, referring to the border situation.
Oh, yeah?
They haven't been willing to call it a crisis. They call it a situation. She actually said the word crisis, you know, like it was a mistake. But, well, we'll see what comes of it. I don't know. But my confidence in what they may do is absolutely zero.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think they'll do one thing right.
I remember Reagan sweeping the presidential race in '80.
Yeah.
Because Carter was at such a all-time low.
Yeah.
People's confidence towards him, but I don't see how. You know, I still believe that wasn't a legit election. I still believe that there was a lot of.
Well, back in the old days, that elections actually meant something. Nowadays, it's just a sham. So much of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's so bad that I think it's ridiculous to even talk about the next election.
Yeah.
You know, I hear Republicans saying, yeah, it's still important to vote. No, it's not. I cannot believe that it is.
Well, I'll vote.
Yeah, I will too. But
for the sake of testimony, not that it'll do anything. In fact, we got these mail-out votes, which is
it's a
absolute
joke too.
nuts anyway. But they got all these candidates for different local offices. We only know by direct acquaintance one name on the whole thing, one, and that's for I think it's for school board. But how can you vote when you don't know anybody? And you listen to their ads. They'll say, so and so, we've lived here a long time, and he's a hard worker. Well, so what? I've lived here a long time too. I know a lot of people that are hard workers, but the question is, what are they working at?
Yeah.
Is their work done properly? Are they doing good work?
Yeah.
Adolf Hitler was a hard worker, but he worked hard at murdering people, So.
Oh man, that's so true.
Just because they're a hard worker, that doesn't mean anything good. Sometimes it'd be better if they just never even showed up. Let them go away somewhere.
Yeah.
But anyway, when you read their ads, they get a lot of advertisement. You still don't know anything about them. What do they actually believe? What will they vote for? What do they propose? Or is it's just another name,
I've never seen a state like Alaska, though, who doesn't even tell you what party they're from.
Yeah.
That's one of their scams here. It's like what do they do? Pick the party out of a hat like they did with Murkowski?
Yeah.
Oh, let's make her a Republican.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing. If I knew they're a liberal Democrat, they will not get my vote no matter what else they claim.
Yeah. And they probably know. They know
that.
Never
vote for a Democrat because they just... You look at all these things wherever there's a big issue, all the Democrats are one way, and they're almost always pro-abortion, anti-Israel, pro-gun grabbing, and all that kind of stuff, and big spending. And I said sometime, a long time back, that I'd ask any candidate one question: where are you on abortion?
Yeah.
And depending on that answer, I'll decide whether I'll vote for you or not. If they're pro-abortion, it's an absolute no-no.
Yeah.
If it's pro-life, then I may ask a few other questions because there's other things too, but that's the first one. If they can't get that one right, then they're not going to get my vote no matter what.
And that's been pretty much solidified on party lines. I think, I believe, who was it? Well, for a while, Biden was anti-abortion. He said
claimed he was, but but he doesn't live.
He's a liar. So what do you expect?
Yeah. Even the Pope said that. He come down these priests that are blessing same-sex marriages. Said you can't do that. He's getting a lot of backlash. The Pope is, because a lot of those priests are going to go that way.
Oh yeah. I think Lieberman was anti-abortion, wasn't he?
Yeah. I always kind of halfway liked him. He seemed like a decent guy.
Yeah, he was.
But, and he claimed the reason he stuck with the Democrats was because he just wanted to have one good voice in that. But I don't know how much good he did there or whether he did any good. But
well, he was the second man on the ticket, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I think the Democrats were just trying to pull the Jewish vote, make history or something. That was kind of like
one
the
thing that I
of,
just cannot comprehend is how can so many American Jews vote liberal when it so stands in the face of Israel. But a lot of American Jews are not for Israel. They don't care anything about Israel.
Yeah,
a lot of them.
Hey, I listened to a fantastic sermon this morning.
Oh, yeah?
There's this guy named Vodi Balkum. He's a big old black fella.
Yeah.
And he's a pretty straight preacher. I mean, he's right on the money about... I've never heard him say something that I disagree with terribly. And but he did he called the sermon... I can't remember what the title was, but it was on social justice and what it really is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, social justice or biblical justice is what it was called.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a good sermon because so many people need to hear something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Because, there you go.
Well, that's those goodies.
Number one.
Those are A1.
Yeah. It was a good expose because, he's apparently doing some kind of a academic level work on it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's written a book, and he kind of summed it up in this sermon, but it was really, really good stuff.
Yeah.
Because, he's not really saying a lot that you don't already know, but to me it's just a outline of the demonic forces and the way that they mislead so many. Because social justice, that sounds like a good thing, doesn't it? It's social and it's justice, and the word justice bleeds over into religion, but his strong point is it is not the same thing.
Well, the world uses all the words that are in the Bible, but they never define not one of them correctly.
Mm-hmm.
They do not know the meaning of the words. They use the words, but they twist the meanings. In our Sunday thing, we're looking at through the letters in Psalm 119. We're up to Het, is letter number 8. So you start right off with the number 8. What does that tell you?
New beginning.
Mm-hmm. Why did the Lord come to the world?
To give everybody a new beginning.
That's the whole thing. So number 8 is the purpose for why he's here.
Mm.
But the letter Ket means a fence or a wall. I just said a minute ago that the world uses all the words in the Bible, but they don't know the definition of any of them. So what is the world called a wall?
Well, you mean like in the political context? They called Trump.
Well, what do they mean when they say a wall? You can use it lots of different ways, but what's meant by a wall?
A barrier?
A barrier. Okay. What's the purpose of a barrier?
Oh, to keep people in or keep people out?
Yeah. Now,
security.
Okay. If you can get through a barrier, then the barrier is not a barrier, is it?
No,
the barrier keeps
secure.
things out.
Mm-hmm.
If you can come through it, you've got a false barrier. It's not a real one.
Mm-hmm.
So, Zechariah 2:4 says, Jerusalem is a city without walls. But they've always had walls there for centuries, haven't they? They haven't just had one wall, they've had many walls. And all those walls have one thing in common. What?
They were secure?
They were?
No.
What do they have in common?
Made out of stone?
Well, that's true, but the important thing is they've all been broken down.
Oh, I got you. Okay, yeah.
So they're by definition, they were barriers, but they could not be keeping anybody out. When the Babylonians wanted to get in, what'd they do?
Came right on in.
They broke the wall down and came, so what good was the barrier? So it really wasn't a barrier, was it?
Mm-mm.
It was a hindrance, but it was not a barrier.
Yeah.
When the Romans wanted to get in, what'd they do to get in?
Just bust it down and get on.
Bust it down the wall. If the Iranians wanted to fire ballistic missiles in Israel, you think they'd worry about the walls that are around it?
No.
That wouldn't do a thing to keep out the ballistic missiles, would it?
Mm-mm.
If Satan wants to get into people, people build walls. Religious systems are walls, aren't they?
Yeah.
The purpose of a wall is to protect the ones who are inside. That's one of the purposes. There's several, but one of them. So why do people get into religious systems?
To feel like they're safe?
Yeah, but are they safe by being in it?
No.
So in truth, the religious system is not a real wall, is it?
Mm-mm.
It's called a wall. It pretends to be a wall. People hope that it is a wall, but what are the facts?
The facts is that they're vulnerable.
Yeah. So it's not a barrier. It can't keep the enemy out.
It's not a wall of fire like we talked about last week.
There's a proverb that says, he that builds a high gate invites destruction. What does that mean?
I just read that, yesterday?
What's it mean?
Does it attract your enemies?
What's the purpose of building a high gate?
Keep them out. Keep the enemies out.
But it says the one who builds that invites destruction. What does that mean?
I would think that it invites the fool to say, "Hey, I wonder what's behind there. I'm gonna bust it down just to see
The
what's
enemy
there."
will say, "Oh, you built a high wall. Well, watch this." And what will he do? Knock it down. So he'll take that as a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So you try to rule the enemy out by building a wall, and you can call it anything you want. Maybe your business, your education could be a wall. Your political power, your trust in military, or your trust in education, or in your good health, or in your beautiful body, or whatever you got, your religious system, your denomination. I'm a member of the Holy Catholic Church, so therefore I'm protected, right? Mm-hmm. I'm a member of the Presbyterians, or I'm a member of the Baptists, or any of these other denominations. Why do we want to be a member of something?
So we'd be behind their wall.
We'd be in that protected position, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that protect us from the demonic spirits?
No.
They know how to break right through that, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Why do people worship idols?
Why do they? Because they want to be in control?
Well, if you worship an idol, who are you offering the control to?
The idol, but it's basically yourself. If you create them in your own image.
Well, if you were going to worship Marduk, for example, how do you go about doing it?
Well, somebody else has made up a system that they say Marduk requires.
Okay, so what you're going to worship him? What do you do?
What is it? Donate your baby?
Yeah, you offer your little one.
Yeah.
You throw it into the fire of Marduk. What do you hope to get for that?
I don't know what he promises in return.
Well, it doesn't matter which idol you're talking about.
Right.
What do they think they're going to get from that idol?
Prosperity, health, wealth, whatever they want.
How about protection?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
What's the difference between an idol and a wall?
It's the same thing, isn't it?
Why build a wall? For protection. Why worship an idol? For protection. Security. Look at Jeremiah chapter 17. Got your book?
Yes, sir, I do. Jeremiah 17.
17, verse 4. Or verse 5, I think it is.
And we have plenty of sunlight to read by.
Yeah.
This is what the Lord says. The man who trusts in mankind, who makes human flesh his strength, and turns his heart from the Lord is accursed.
Okay, stop there. Okay, that guy is cursed. Why?
Because his heart turned from the Lord and
and
trusted in human flesh.
Right. So what's an idolater doing?
Turning his trust away from God into something else.
Exactly that, right?
Yeah.
All right. That's verse 5, isn't it?
Yeah.
Verse 6.
He will be like a juniper in the Arabah. He cannot see when good comes, but dwells in the parched places in the wilderness and the salt land where no one lives.
All right. The salt land, the Arabah. Do you know what the Arabah is?
It's a desert, right?
Yeah, the desert. It starts south of Jerusalem, goes on down all the way to the southern. So you got there in the desert. How much stuff is growing out there?
Not much.
Almost nothing.
Almost nothing, yeah.
But once in a while, you will see a bush here and there.
Uh-huh.
How can there be a bush there in that dry desert?
Just is.
Well, normally nothing can grow out there, but you'll find a few things growing because here a seed blows in from some distant area, and they do get a little bit of rain out there, not much, but every now and then you'll get a little bit of rain. So somehow that seed gets a little bit of rain, it germinates, and next thing you know, we got a bush there. But there may not be rain for 3 more years. What's the chance of that bush becoming a real good?
Not too much.
Raising a crop or something.
Not too good.
So the bush will come up sometime. Not very often, but they do. And if you could talk to the bush, if it could talk to you, you ask the bush, what do you hope will happen, Mr. Bush?
I want to drink of water.
What do you think will happen? What does he want?
You're going to die. He wants to live.
I want to live. What do you need to live?
Water.
Well, I'm sorry, but there isn't much water out here, so your chances are pretty slim.
Yeah.
So it says in verse 4, or verse 5 you read, here's what the Lord says. What does the Lord say? He said, here's what the Lord says.
The man who trusts in mankind, who makes human flesh his strength and turns his heart from the Lord, is cursed.
Because he is like what?
A juniper in the Arabah. He cannot see when he
some kind of a
good comes.
Tree or a bush growing.
Yeah.
Since he's like that, what's his chances of success?
No chance.
0, right?
Right.
In fact, he's under a curse. Now,
sounds like...
What does a curse mean?
Well, it depends on who issued the curse, because God curses you. Well, if you are not under God's blessings, you don't have any chance. But something.
What's the definition of a curse?
Well,
how would you define it?
It's the opposite of a blessing, isn't it? There's like a split in the road. One way is a blessing, and one way is a curse.
So what is the curse? That's true, but what does it amount to?
Destruction.
Okay. A very common curse, as people say routinely, is asking God to damn someone. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
What does damn mean?
Can put them under a curse.
What does it mean?
I don't know. Send them to hell.
Condemn, right?
Yeah.
If you're condemned, what does that mean?
It means you have no chance.
You're done for, aren't you?
Yeah.
You've been judged and found guilty, and they're sending you to the death penalty, aren't they, if you've been condemned? So, who then is condemned in that passage?
The one who turns his heart from God.
Yeah. You know, when Adam rebelled against God and listened to the words of the enemy, the Lord announced a curse, but he did not curse Adam. He cursed the land.
Mm-hmm.
When God curses someone, they're condemned. And if you're condemned, what hope do you have?
Right.
Did God take away the hope from Adam?
No.
How do you know that?
Because he walked away with his life. And
walked away with a whole lot more in his life.
Well, he had...
what did God give him?
Life itself.
If you read Genesis, what would you see that God gave Adam?
Gave him a covering, gave him...
Yes, right there. A coating of skin of an animal, which was really a parable of what?
Yeshua.
Yeah. Quoting of the sacrifice of Yeshua. He gave that to Adam. Did Adam take it?
Yeah.
So where does that put Adam?
Right with God.
Even though he was a rebel, even though he had disobeyed and gone against him, he received the sacrifice that God offered him, didn't he?
Yeah.
Which is a picture of Yeshua. So what happened to the curse? He was never cursed. If he had been cursed, he'd had no hope, would he?
Right.
He'd been condemned. If God condemns someone, they pretty much stay condemned, don't they?
Yeah.
But he did curse the land. So what happened to the land?
Turned into Araba?
Pretty much. What had been a fruitful land.
Yeah.
What did Adam have to do to get fruit to eat?
Just go pick it.
Just go get it. It's there. Did it take any effort to get it?
No.
But he said, after this, the land will still produce for you, but you're going to have to work hard at it. You're going to have to do painful toil. You're going to suffer. You're going to get injured. It's going to cost you a lot of time, sweat, and effort. Make you tired and weary and painful, isn't it? Because the land is not under that blessing anymore. Now it's under a curse. So you read the next verse now. Now we see what happens to the man who turns away from God. Next verse.
The man who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence indeed is the Lord, is blessed. He will be like a tree planted by water. It sends out its roots toward a stream. It doesn't fear when heat comes. Its foliage remains green. It will not worry in a year of drought or cease producing fruit. Everything good. That's a blessing.
Okay, so you go to the Jordan River up east of Jerusalem, and now there's a lot of desert out there. Not much rain or anything. But all along the Jordan River are big trees growing and bushes and all kinds of plants growing, just lush places all along the river, right by the edge of the river. And during the dry season, the summertime, there is no rain in Jerusalem area or in the Air Jordan Valley. It doesn't rain there in the summer. But the river keeps flowing. Where does the river come from anyway, you know?
Hermon?
Hermon, yeah, Mount Hermon. And Mount Hermon looks like those. It's not sharp like it. It's kind of rounded, but it's covered with snow.
Yeah.
Most of the year. And so it makes a continuous water supply flowing down the Jordan River. And the trees that are along the edge of the river, the groundwater that comes from the river soaks down the ground, and their roots are tapping that water. So even during the dry season, when there's no rain, are those trees being watered?
Yeah.
All the time. They're
Just
always
like
being
this
watered.
passage here.
And that's a parable, isn't it?
Yeah.
The passage is not about trees, it's about people. Here's a man who does what?
Who keeps his heart turned to the Lord.
And what will he be like?
Be like a prosperous tree.
And he refers to that tree in a special situation.
Fruit production.
How is the tree able to produce fruit during the dry season?
It's connected to the water source.
Because the roots reach down to where the water is, don't they? And you know, when the river's flowing on the surface, there's a lot of water under the surface you never see because it soaks down in. And those roots are able to tap into that. So he says the man that trusts the Lord is like a tree by the water, by the river. And you look at it, it's in good shape, plush. If it's a fruit tree, it'll be bearing fruit. Whatever kind of tree it is, it'll do what that tree is made to do. So in that little passage, verse 5 through 8, you've got two kinds of people, don't you? What?
Somebody who trusts in the Lord, somebody who doesn't.
That's it. And the whole difference is who you're trusting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, when someone builds a wall, remember we're talking about chet, meaning a wall. Why do they build a wall?
For protection?
Yeah. So they're going to trust the wall.
Yeah.
But he said Jerusalem will be a city without walls.
Right. Because it's got a wall of fire.
Well, he says it will be without walls.
Right.
If you're without walls, how many walls you got?
You don't have a wall.
But you look at ancient Jerusalem, go to Jerusalem today, there are walls around the old city today, right now.
Yeah.
But how much protection do they give the people?
Not much.
Not much?
No.
Did they give them any protection?
Maybe a little. But
tell me about what protection do they give anybody?
Well, you know, the weapons are so.
Well, there's a wall on the Temple Mount called the Western Wall.
Yeah.
Keeps
out tourists.
It doesn't keep the tourists out. We went in and did fine. Yeah. Lots of thousands of Arabs go in there, Jews go in there. Not allowed to pray, but you go in there. That wall doesn't keep anybody out. It's a wall. It's made out of huge stones. You can't go through it, but there is openings through it, and you can go right through. We went. But here's another thing. Why was that wall or any wall ever built in the first place?
Well, we've already said that. To make protection.
Okay. What are those walls built out of? What are they built out of?
Stone.
Where do they get the stones?
From around there.
Where are they? If they wanted to build a wall, where would they find the stones?
In a quarry or?
No.
Just
they'll find them laying right there where the wall used to be that was built before.
Yeah.
And they take the same stones that used to be a wall, stack them back up again, and then what happens a few centuries later? Down they come again.
And then they use them again next time.
Yeah. So they're very well-used rocks, stones. Have they ever kept an enemy out?
Not for long, no.
Temporarily, yes, but in the long run. Now, the Babylonians attacked, the Greeks attacked, the Persians attacked, the Romans attacked, and the Muslims have attacked numerous times. And sooner or later, they always manage to break through, don't they?
Yeah.
So, could it be true that anything that people think is a wall of protection for them is just as vulnerable to an enemy as the old is Jerusalem wall, wouldn't you think?
Yeah.
Whatever, you can call your wall your business or your education or your political power or your respect from your neighbors or your religious denomination. Whatever it is you call your wall or your backwards collar with a logo on the front that tells your name and that you are an elder or something. Anything you put on to give you some kind of protection, how much protection will it give you?
Well, just like the walls, maybe a little bit. But
a little bit and temporary, right?
Yeah.
But sooner or later,
it's all going to come down.
And if we are depending on anything that we call a wall to protect us, does the enemy, the demonic forces, do they know where the weak parts of that wall are?
Because they probably already took them down another time.
They've been there many times before, and the one we put up is no better than the ones that were before because it's made out of the same stones.
Yeah.
So the same stones that Nehemiah stacked up to rebuild the wall are the same ones that are there today. They haven't got any new stones, and they don't throw them away. They just reuse them.
Yeah.
So the walls that people build have been built over and over since Adam put on fig leaves. Wasn't that a wall?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Why did he put those fig leaves on?
That was his wall, yeah.
Why did he put them on?
Because he was trying to protect himself.
And protect himself from the judgment of God, wasn't he? So any wall is designed to be a protection. But the Lord looks at all the walls that's always been around Jerusalem and says they don't have any walls. It's without walls. because the world calls a wall a barrier. The Lord says that's not a barrier. It doesn't keep anybody out. The Babylonians can come in whenever they're ready, and the Greeks can, and the Persians, and the Romans, and the Muslims, and every demonic power there is can come right through that wall. You build a high gate, they know how to knock it down. So that's not a wall. But if that's where it was left, what hope would Israel ever have?
None.
But he says in Zechariah, I myself will be a wall of fire around it.
Mm-hmm.
I myself. Who builds the I myself wall of Zechariah?
The Lord himself.
So if the Lord builds a wall, it's a wall, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a real wall.
Mm-hmm.
And what can the enemy do without it?
Nothing.
Can he break through it?
No.
So when Zechariah said Jerusalem's a city without walls, he really means they have what they call walls. The reason in Jeremiah where it says men put their trust in idols, they call those idols by a name. What do they call them?
I don't know.
Gods.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But it says they put their trust in gods that are not gods. They call them gods, but they're not gods. So if they're not a god, what are they?
Idols.
Well,
false gods.
They're false, or they're nothing but the imagination of people, aren't they?
Yeah.
So what are the people putting their trust in?
Their own imaginations.
Yeah, they're putting their trust in something that they call a god. You know, the world calls lots of things by name that aren't real. When Pontius Pilate said to the Lord, I have power over you, when he said that, what do you think he meant by that? What did Pontius Pilate mean when he said, I have power over you?
He had, he was saying that I'm in control now.
Yeah. When Pharaoh said to Moses, who is God that I should obey him? What was he saying?
He's saying, I'm a bigger God than you've ever known.
I'm the real God.
Yeah.
I can overpower whatever you call God.
Yeah.
But they are gods that are not gods. They call them gods, but they're not. So when Pontius Pilate said, I have power, what did the Lord answer?
He said, you wouldn't have any power if it wasn't for my Father.
So what only power is there around here?
The real God.
That's the power. Whatever you have is only something he's giving you for serving his own purpose. As soon as he's done with it, that's the end of you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Same story with Pharaoh, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So they're calling something gods that are not gods, and they're worshiping it because they're hoping it'll give them security and purpose and make their life successful and so on. So my feeling is that the false gods are just another form of a wall, aren't they?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So when Zechariah said Israel doesn't have any walls, even though there's stone walls standing there, they call them walls, but they're not walls, because if they really were walls, the enemy wouldn't be able to get in. But the enemy walks right through them because they're not real. They're just the world's concept of what a wall is. The Lord said, they're not walls. I'm going to build a wall there. Now, in Zechariah, where that passage is, if you go back to Zechariah, are you to Zechariah?
No. Yeah.
Look at, I think about verse 2. About verse 2.
Where are you going? He answered me to measure Jerusalem.
You go back one verse before that.
I looked up and saw a man with a measuring line in his hand.
Got a measuring line.
Yeah.
And go on then.
I asked, where are you going? He answered me to measure Jerusalem to determine its width and length.
Okay, here's a guy with a measuring line, and his purpose is to measure the city. Why would he measure the city? to find out the length and width. It says right there.
Yeah.
Why would he do that?
To report back to the Lord. Of course, the Lord don't know how. He knows how big it is already.
Well, if you were driving by some vacant property and you see some guys out there with survey things, driving stakes and stretching out measuring, what do you expect they're doing that for?
Probably for a real estate transaction.
Well, why would they do it? Why measure it?
To define what it is.
What do you expect to happen there pretty soon? It's a vacant lot.
Yeah, you expect something to be built there.
They're getting ready to build something.
Yeah.
So what's happening in Jerusalem? He's going out with a measuring line, measuring the city.
Yeah.
Why is he measuring it?
Going to build a wall?
It needs a wall, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it already had a wall. The Lord said, that's not a wall.
I'll be a wall of fire around
I'll
it.
be the wall. So he's measuring the city in preparation for building this wall, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he's going to build a real wall, not a false wall.
Yeah.
They've already built false walls. How much good did they do?
Not much.
Temporarily, they seem to do something. But the very fact that it's temporary shows that it was a failure in the end, wasn't it? You do anything that you're only going to do for a little while and then it wouldn't work anymore. The definition of your operation is failure, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because when something comes to its end and it doesn't work anymore, it fails.
Yeah.
And
Definition of failure.
so if the wall fails, then what happens? You build the wall for security, but the wall fails, so what happens?
Your security has failed.
Yeah. So if we're going to trust in failing walls, we might as well call them what they really are. They're false walls, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're not real. So he said it's a city without walls. You can say, oh, I know it does have walls. I've been there. I stood right in front of it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah? Well, what you stood in
That's
front
no
of
wall.
was not a wall. It was intended to be a wall. We thought it was a wall. It's supposed to do a wall, but it can't do what a wall does.
Kind of like when the guy from Australia had those guys pull a knife on him. He said, "That's not a knife. It's a knife."
Crocodile Dundee.
Yeah. Some guys dressed like a Ukrainian.
What?
The guy's dressed like a Ukrainian with the leather jacket like he's got. Black jacket up top, dark pants.
Walks like a Ukrainian, too. They all walk that way. They put left, right, left, right, left. That's how they walk.
I thought you meant.
This other guy, he's a Ukrainian, too, so he walks the same way. He dressed like an Israeli, all black.
That's how one of those countries on the, I can't remember which one, Latvia or something, Estonia maybe, they all wear black too.
Uzbekistan, I was there, they're all black.
Really?
Mm-hmm. They told me that's a Russian influence. See, it was part of the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
The Russians tried for 20, 30 years to subdue them, never had any success with it. But they managed to give them a communist government.
A lot of people in Washington think that they got walls up that'll protect them.
Yeah, they do. Well, the concept of the wall of fire, if you took that literally, which so many people think you got to do, then what would Jerusalem look like?
Fireball.
Yeah. But if you look at it as a parable, then what does a wall of fire sound like?
Was it seem like it is? Well, you can't see it, but it's mighty, and it's impenetrable.
Yeah, and why call it fire?
Because the Lord himself is a consuming fire.
Yeah, there's something about fire. It's probably the most destructive force there is, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Virtually everything will burn if you put enough heat on it, won't it? Stone will burn. Steel will burn. You ever see a cutting torch work?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with a cutting torch?
Just put the fire to it.
And it literally
It just burns the hole.
breaks the steel down.
Mm-hmm.
So fire is probably recognized, at least in biblical times, as perhaps the most destructive force there is. And if fire hits something, nobody can live in it, can they?
Mm-mm.
Kills everything it comes into.
Sucks all the oxygen out of the air.
So if he makes a wall of fire around his people, what happens when the enemy comes to try to break it down?
You can't get to the people.
What would the wall of fire do?
To protect the people.
How?
By defeating the enemy, or at least...
Yeah, if the enemy tried to attack him, he'd be burned up, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
And so a wall does more, though, than just protect. You think of anything else that a wall does besides protecting?
It's kind of like a sheepfold too. It keeps the in the sense of a sheep gate, it keeps the sheep in.
Okay, why do you want to keep the sheep in?
Well, to protect them and to feed them.
Because if they go out, what are they going to find when they go out?
The enemy, no protection.
Predators are out there.
Mm-hmm.
There are times, though, when they need to go out. They need to go out to where there's water and where there's grass.
Water, grass, yeah.
But the shepherd doesn't just open the gate and say, okay, go for it, guys. What does the shepherd do?
He leads them.
He leads them because he's taking them out into the world where predators are, but it's also where they need to be for a while. But they need to be under his protection, because if he just sent them out without that protection, the wolves would be out there to get them, wouldn't they?
Mm-hmm.
So if a sheep tried to get out on his own, what will a shepherd do?
Pull him back.
Yeah, or something. But remember, the shepherd says he is the door.
Mm-hmm.
So the door, when it's time to let the sheep out or bring them out, he opens the door and then leads them out. When it's time to let them back in, he opens the door and lets them in. When he wants to keep them in, he closes the door, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And so the door controls what goes in and out.
Mm-hmm.
If you're coming into Anchorage from Wasilla or Palmer or somewhere, how do you know when you're actually in the city?
It'll tell you on the signs.
Well, you've driven out there quite a bit. What do you see out there that tells you we are now in Anchorage? For sure, right at this exact point, we're in Anchorage.
It says, "Welcome to Anchorage."
Where do you see that sign?
In front of Merrill Field.
So until you get to that, you're not in Anchorage, huh?
Well, you are.
How do you know when you're exactly in the city?
When you pass J-Bear.
How do you know that that's the point where you're in?
That's the way Anchorage is. That's where the lines are.
Have you seen the marker lines?
No.
The lines at the Connect River. It's not at J-Bear.
Huh.
Well, the fact is, there's no way to know when you're really actually in the city. If you're coming in from down south, how do you know when you're actually in the city?
Passing Potter's Marsh. That's the only thing I know.
So at which point at Potter's Marsh are you in the city?
The boardwalk. I don't know. There is no way to know.
Why not? Why isn't there any way to know in your city? Because there's nothing definite there to tell you. If there's a wall there around the city, the way you know you're in is when you go through the gateway inside the wall.
Yeah.
You are now inside the city. Outside the wall, you are not in the city. The wall determines where you are.
Right. Boundaries.
Jerusalem is a city without walls. So how do they know whether they're in the Lord's city or not? Now, right now, there are a wall around the old city, but the new Jerusalem, the big Jerusalem, there's no walls there. Only around that little central part, which is called the old city. That's almost like a museum piece. But if you go to Jerusalem, Jerusalem's a big city. How do you suppose you know when you're exactly in the city of Jerusalem?
Well, in the parable sense, the Lord will tell you. Because
let's go to the literal. How do you know if you're over there and you want to go to Jerusalem? You're at Beersheba, or you're at Jericho, or you're at Tel Aviv, and you're going to Jerusalem. How do you know when you're actually in Jerusalem?
I guess you had to ask somebody.
There's no way to know.
Okay, same
because
principle.
There's no marker, nothing definite. A wall is a definite point. In the old way, when they build a wall around a city, like Nehemiah built the wall, you're either inside or you're outside, and all it determines is where's the wall. Mm-hmm. So the wall tells you where you are. A lot of the Lord's people don't know whether they're in the Lord's kingdom or not.
True. Because
there's nothing definite to tell them.
Mm-hmm.
How would you ever know whether you're in or not? There is a way. Got to have a wall.
Got to have a wall. Firewall.
Or it says, I'll be a wall. Now, in ancient Israel, whenever an enemy attacked, the first thing they try to do is either break down the wall or break the gates open, wouldn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Because once they can break open the gates or break the wall down, then they can conquer the city. But as long as the wall is there, they can't penetrate if it's a real wall. And when the people who are inside, when they see their wall standing, even though the enemy is trying to attack, how does that make the people inside feel?
Anxious?
They see the wall being attacked, but it's not falling.
Oh, confident.
Gives them confidence, doesn't it? So one thing that the wall does is protects you. It gives you definition as to where you are. It also gives you confidence or optimism that we are protected, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Now, for soldiers who are working on the wall, what does the wall do for the soldiers on the wall? You know, on the top of the wall, they have a walkway, and they have what's called a parapet. What's a parapet?
Place to look out?
Well, it's a little raised wall section with slots in it where they can look through and shoot arrows through. So what does the wall do for the soldiers who are up there on the wall?
Gives them something to stand on.
Okay. Gives them a place to attack the enemy. Also gives them the advantage of height, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If you're up on top of something, it's a lot easier to throw spears down and boiling oil or arrows or rocks or everything else than having to throw them upward, isn't it?
Right.
And it presents a situation that's a disadvantage to the enemy because in order for the enemy to get in, he's got to climb it or break it down or something.
You got to overcome that advantage that the people on the high wall have.
So it gives them an advantage to the ones who are defending.
Yeah.
Also gives them the advantage of better visibility. If you're up high, you can see the enemy way off in the distance coming. If you're down low, you can lose sight of them. So there's all kinds of things a wall does. But it has to be a real wall. If it's a temporary man-made wall, it may work for a while, but you can't rely on it, can you?
Right.
So everything in these ideas, every religious system claims to do all that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Every political system claims to do that. Every education system. Why do people spend millions of dollars going to colleges?
Give them a wall.
To get all that stuff that a wall's supposed to do, don't they?
Yeah.
Why they spend trillions of dollars on military hardware?
To give themselves a wall.
So a wall is kind of a picture of everything that the people depend on for their well-being in every way to them.
Yeah, all your trust, all your hope, all your...
And it's the same thing that an idol does. So we can see why God is so strict about not worshiping idols.
Yeah.
Because when you worship an idol, what does he say there in Jeremiah? The man who worships the idol puts his trust in that like a tree planted or a tree growing in the burnt-up desert.
Yeah. Takes away all
there's no water.
Hope for any kind of prosperity.
Yeah, he won't survive. So
that's the profundity of that first command to no other gods.
And all that's in that letter Chet, the 8th letter. So, you know, the first time we read about directly, not parabolically, but directly, the words born again is when Yeshua was talking to Nicodemus, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Did Nicodemus have a wall?
Yeah.
What was it?
It was the seek in his heart. He was looking after, he was trying to find what
well, that's the real wall, but what was his?
Oh, he was a Pharisee.
Yeah, and
his wall was knowing stuff and telling other people stuff. The very first
thing he said to Yeshua in that passage was, "We know who you are."
Yeah. We have settled by committee.
We have knowledge. Yeah. So what's his wall?
Knowledge.
That knowledge gives us position before it does everything that a wall is supposed to do. It defines where we are. It protects us from our enemies. It gives us security and confidence. It makes us glad. It just is a great thing, this wall that we have called What We Know.
Yeah.
And what did the Lord say about that?
He said, you're a teacher of Israel and you don't know?
You don't know. You say you know. You're a teacher of Israel. If you really knew, you'd have a wall. But what your confidence is in is not a real wall.
Right.
It's phony, and it will fail you. Yeah. Unless you get what I'm calling a wall, you're never even going to see the kingdom.
Right.
So what did he do with Nicodemus' wall?
He tore it down.
He tore it down.
And replaced it with a better one.
Yeah. Did Nicodemus get a better wall?
I think he did, yeah.
Yes, he did, thankfully.
Yeah.
We know he did because of what he did after that. First time, even though he had a wall that he thought would protect him, he was not confident. He was fearful, wasn't he? Mm-hmm. How do we know he was fearful?
Because he snuck in at night.
He sneaked around at night so that no one else would know he's there, because he knew if they found out what he was doing, he could lose his place in the synagogue, couldn't he?
They'd throw him over the wall.
Yeah. But the next time we read about him, he's right out in front of the whole world at 3 o'clock in the afternoon doing what he can to honor God, and he goes right straight to the federal government to get permission to do it. Pontius Pilate had said that he had power of the Lord. Don't you think Nicodemus would be afraid of Pontius Pilate?
Not with a wall.
But you'd think he would be, wouldn't he?
You would think,
if he was depending on his own wall, but that wall was ruined. Now he's got the wall of fire around him, so he's not afraid to go to Pontius Pilate. Does he worry about what other Pharisees may think?
Not anymore.
When the Lord was crucified, were there any Pharisees around?
Yeah, they were all around.
How about the high priest?
Yeah, he was there.
And many, many rabbis, right?
Yes.
Literally everybody in town was there just about. With Roman soldiers. Normally when people are around Roman soldiers who are busy crucifying people, how do most people feel?
We're going to get out of here so we won't be next.
We don't want to be too close to this because one wrong move you may be next.
Yeah.
But all that was there. And what is it that makes people so afraid?
Because they're trusting in a wall that's not the right one.
Exactly. If you're trusting in something that's not trustworthy, then when trouble comes, you're going to be afraid. What gets rid of fear?
Love.
Perfect love casts out fear, right?
Yeah.
So, boy, that's Kim Jong-un right there.
Because of the haircut?
I didn't know he was here. There he is, loading his car with North Korean groceries.
All the dignitaries from China were here, and I didn't know it until they were gone.
Well, if he hadn't got a Kim Jong-un haircut, I'll put him with you, doesn't he?
A lot of those military guys have one just like it.
So, anyway, we can see that Nicodemus really get surrounded by the firewall, so therefore he is not afraid, and we can see the proof of it by his actions, huh?
Yeah.
So, when the Lord says over and over and over through the book, don't be afraid, how many times did he say, don't be afraid? Hundreds of times, right?
It is that many, I'm sure. Very close. I heard somebody say it the other day, believe it or not.
Yeah.
I was listening to some sermon, and the guy said, this is how many times. It's at least, I think he said 60 or something.
Yeah.
But it's a lot.
Many, many times. How can he ask somebody to not be afraid if they don't have any real wall around them? If whatever they're calling a wall is all they got, they're going to be afraid, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, one place, I think it's in Jeremiah, where he said, fear not, I have redeemed you. Is that Jeremiah? Fear not, for I have redeemed you.
I don't recall that passage.
I think it's Jeremiah. At any rate, when he says, fear not, for I have redeemed you, what's been done for them?
They have the wall.
Yeah, I've surrounded you with that protection wall, so therefore you don't have to be afraid. And there is one who does need to be afraid, and it's Satan, and he is afraid. Why is he afraid?
Because he knows that he can't approach the wall.
Yeah, he knows what this wall of fire is about. And what is the wall of fire exactly? What is it?
The Lord himself.
Yeah, he said, I myself will be the wall. So we were putting titles on Psalm 119.
Yeah.
And Psalm 119 could be defined, I brought this up again too. I said, what is the Hebrew word for truth?
Emet.
If you're going to write emet in Hebrew, how do you spell it?
Aleph Mem Tav.
Yep. So emet is Aleph Tav with a mem in the middle of it, right?
Right.
So what's Psalm 119?
Aleph Tav with a mem in the middle.
That's right. So what is Psalm 119? What does it spell?
Truth.
The Lord said, I am the truth.
Yeah.
So we could say Psalm 119 is Yeshua, isn't it?
Yeah.
He is the truth, and he makes truth. Psalm 119 is Aleph Mem Tav. And when he says, and this is in Revelation, but it's been translated into Greek, where it says, I am the Aleph, or I am the
Alpha
and the Omega.
Yeah.
That's Greek. That's not original Hebrew. But what it really should say is, I am the Aleph Tav. I am the first and I am the last. And when in the Psalm 22 is the crucifixion psalm, what's the last word of Psalm 22?
It's finished.
It's finished. What's finished?
The building of the wall?
Yeah. Remember the angel was going around with a measuring line, measuring cities. Yeah. How many rolls of wire do we? How many bales of whatever fire is going to be needed? We're going to build a wall here. And so when you're building something, let's say you were building a garage, and you're working and working and working on it, and you finally get to the point where you say, there, it's finished.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean nothing more will happen now?
No, that's just the beginning of a new kind of thing.
So when you say it's finished, what do you mean by that?
Means let's get going with what it's really here for.
Yeah, the building of it's done. Now we're going to put to use, or we're going to start using it. So when he said it's finished, he didn't mean I won't do anything else. He meant I'm through building it. Now we're going to have why it was built. Why is the purpose for it? What's the reason for having it? So could he have said it's finished about the wall of fire?
Only if it's indicating what is to come.
Well, if he said I'm going to be a wall of fire, and so measuring line was done to determine the size of this wall, and now he says it's finished. The wall's built, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that the last thing he'll ever do?
No. He's getting on to another work.
Finish building it. The purpose for its building was to protect my people. They got to live. They got a life to live. So how long does their life go on?
Forever and ever.
So the work of building the wall is finished, but the life for which the wall was built never comes to its end, does it?
Right.
It goes on forever. So
that's good news.
You know, the Pharisees interpreted the Sabbath when it says in Genesis that on the sixth day the Lord finished his work, and then he rested on the seventh. That's the way it's written, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
How'd the Pharisees interpret that?
Then you can't do anything.
So as far as when they say God rested, I mean he's not going to do anything else.
Right.
He just rests.
Right.
He just leans back, everything stops. So when the Lord said to the Pharisees, my Father's working and we always are working. So what day does the Lord work on?
All the days.
But I thought he said he's finished working.
Well, he started the rescue business.
He's finished building, right? Finished creating. So the wall has been built. So how much more work does he do on building the wall?
No more wall building work, but...
That's done, isn't it? It's finished.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean he doesn't do anything, does it? So what does he do?
Does the rescue work.
I built the wall to protect my people so that they could live, right?
Yeah.
So how are we going to live?
Under his protection.
So has the shepherd got work to do?
Yeah.
When does his work end?
Never ends.
Because we're always working. And so that doesn't mean when he said he's finished working that he doesn't do anything after that. But the Pharisees, the way they interpreted it, you stop doing anything, don't you?
Yeah.
You can't snap on a light. You can't light your stove. You can't start your car. What can you do?
Push a button in an elevator?
You can't go on the all the way up elevator. You can't cook a meal. You can't walk anywhere just a short little ways. You can't do hardly anything. You just stop doing anything at all. What's wrong with their concept?
It's a wall. That's not the real one.
Yeah, and what they're doing is just stifling even living, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're saying the wall's been built, but now there's nothing to do with it. You can't do anything. You just sit. So,
it's like the Lord said. He said, the Sabbath is made for mankind. I mean, man. Yeah,
You got it.
Yeah. Sabbath's made for mankind, not mankind for the Sabbath.
Yeah. So what they're doing, they're bowing down. They made the Sabbath into an idol, haven't they?
Yeah.
And also, if their concept were true, and the Lord did all the creating, and then He stops doing anything, then what purpose would the creation serve?
Well, nothing would be done.
There's the creation. I'm not going to do anything with it. It just sits there.
Yeah.
So He said, I've come that you might have life.
Yeah.
But if I come to sit down and do nothing, then what happens to this life I've come to do for you?
Well, it's not anything either.
There won't be anything there. So,
Right.
You know, when He divided the time frame up into 7 days, we have the concept of weeks. Many times in the book, the week is used as a time measurement. The Pentecost is 7 weeks past Passover, right?
Yeah.
So we got a 7-day week. A 7-day is a like a complete cycle of time, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
What happens after the 7th day?
They restart.
Starts over again, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because you can't have an 8-day week. Everything is 7 days.
Right.
But the very concept of 8, what happens on the 8th day? You lived your week, 7 days. What happens on the 8th day?
You start over.
You start a new one. That's why 8 represents new beginnings. You start a new time frame, don't you?
Yeah.
You don't just make the first time longer. You don't add to the first one. That day ends at Sabbath, and a new one starts. So that's a picture of being born again, isn't it?
Yeah.
The old life comes to its end. And the ending is just like when the Lord died in Psalm 22. It's finished. That's what He said just before He died, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's finished. So what got finished?
The redemption work?
The what? Yeah,
The
and
redemption.
the creation and the redemption from the fall. The atoning work, the redemption, that got done. It's finished. Does He have to go and do something more in addition to the death, burial, and resurrection in order to provide redemption?
No.
It's finished. Nothing more to do. But that doesn't mean He doesn't do anything after that. It just means He's done making the redemption, providing a firewall and so on. So now we're going to go on with making the people live. When the city is protected by the wall of fire, what are the people in the city supposed to do? Now that it's protected, what should they do?
Live life.
Yeah.
Go about their
Live.
business. Yeah.
Do your job. Do your work. Worship at the temple. Teach your children. Provide. Grow crops. All the things that life does.
Talk about God in the wayside.
Yeah. But you don't just quit doing anything. If finishing the firewall meant everything comes to a screeching stop, and what are the people going to do? Is sit there until they die and do nothing, No point in that. But the Pharisees couldn't seem to see that, could they?
Right.
So they would stone a guy for carrying a little mat or something like that.
Yeah.
Almost all the accusations they made against Yeshua, or not all of them, but a lot of them, had to do with the Sabbath, didn't they?
Yeah.
He was always violating the Sabbath, in their opinion.
Yeah.
He's walking along one day with his disciples. By the way, how far could you walk on the Sabbath?
I don't know the exact measurement, but it wasn't far.
Yeah, I don't either.
Basically basically you could barely walk out of your house.
Yeah, from probably here to that snowbank or something.
Yeah.
One little short distance you could walk, but
You'd be in your
can't
yard.
really go
That's
anywhere.
about it. Yeah.
So anyway, he's out there walking with his disciples. Do you suppose he observed that rule?
No, they were walking a greater distance.
Well, we don't know that for sure. My guess is he would not violate the rule, because they never charged him with walking too far. You don't hear that.
Yeah, that's true.
They'd have caught it if he was. But as they were walking, they're walking through a grain field, probably barley or wheat, and they're chatting, talking. Some of them reached out and grabbed a handful and started chewing on him. That wouldn't be very unusual, would it?
Not on the Sabbath day.
Well,
because that's harvesting.
That's what the Pharisees call it. But if you were harvesting the crop, that's not how you do it. How do you harvest the crop?
With a scythe.
You go in there with your bag that you're going to put the grain. You got your scythe in your hand. You're whacking at it, cutting it, stacking it, carrying it back to the place where you're storing it or threshing it or whatever. And you start early in the morning and you work all day until late in the evening, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you've done a long day's work.
You're bringing in the sheaves.
That's what harvesting is.
Yeah.
But picking the grain off the top and chewing it while you talk is not harvesting the crop.
No.
But they would interpret it that way. Why would they interpret it as being harvesting the crop?
Because they wanted to catch Yeshua in doing something that they said was wrong.
Yeah, and their concept of whatever it meant is so narrow that there's no room for movement in it, is there? I mean, if you picked one little... I mean, how much grain would you have to pick off, in their opinion, to be violating the Sabbath?
There was probably a table somewhere that
one
told
little
you that.
handful of it would be enough to get you stoned to death. And so, the false religious system does that to people. It puts burdens on them, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The Lord says if you know the truth will set you free. But if your confidence is in false religion, it will make a slave out of you, won't it?
Yeah.
It won't set you free. It'll enslave you, in fact. And look how many people are enslaved by false religion.
Mm-hmm. Well, we know James 1:27 defines true religion.
Yeah.
How would you define false religion?
Well, false religion always serves self, doesn't it? And what James called true religion, what do you do in true religion that's not defiled?
Serving somebody else.
You're serving someone else, and at your own expense.
Yeah.
When he says, visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction, where do you go to visit them?
Wherever they're afflicted.
Yeah, you don't invite them to come to your thing where you got plush cushions and stained glass windows. You go out into the slums where they are.
Yeah.
And walk right into the place where they're in danger and where they're poor and where things are not very comfortable and nice. Why would you do that? Are they going to pay you to do that?
No.
Then why would you do it?
Because the Lord said so.
Well, why do you want to do what the Lord says so?
To show them that He loves them.
Yeah. So love is a motivator that brings you into serving other people. But false religion does not work that way. False religion puts demands on people with rules and regulations and punishment and threats and excommunication and all kinds of things like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it puts people in prison. It kills people. The Muslims are constantly killing people because they insulted Muhammad or something, Yeah. They love to destroy. The Pharisees were loved to stone people because they thought they were violating their rules. So that's what false religion does. It serves self and it punishes others. True religion, that James said, one that's not defiled, serves the Lord and rather than yourself, and lifts people up rather than punishing them.
Yeah.
And it gives life instead of death.
And like in that social justice talk that we was having earlier, social justice tends to say, this is not right or that's not just.
Yeah.
Instead of, like James 1:27, I'm not trying to be too harsh on people who believe in Yeshua, because it's easier to go to a religious service than it is to help to go to those widows and orphans in their affliction. But yeah, that's the whole point, is that true religion is going and being with them where they are, and not just complaining that they don't have it good.
Yeah. Well, when James says you visit the fatherless and the widows, does it mean you go there and start doing whatever they do?
No. It's just a...
Why do they do what they do?
Well, they do what they do because they are who they are. They're in the position that they are in because of social connections being lost.
So when he says visit them...
They lost their fathers or lost their spouses.
When he says visit them in their affliction is what makes it painful for them. It's what's causing them to suffer, isn't it? So you're sort of joining with them in the suffering, but that doesn't mean you do what's wrong with what they're doing. If you do what's wrong with what they're doing, then you're just being one of them, aren't you?
Yeah.
When the Lord told the Israelites when they went into Canaan, don't join in with the Canaanites. You're supposed to keep separated from them. Does that mean that he had no hope for the Canaanites? Well, it's kind of hard to picture, perhaps, but he said the danger, if you join in with them, you'll start doing what they do. What do they do?
Canaanite things. They don't follow the Lord.
What's the big thing they do?
Worship other gods.
Yeah, the false idol, that's the big thing. You go join in with them, next thing you know, they'll have you worshiping their idols. It doesn't mean you don't take truth to them, but you don't go there to see what they're doing. You go there to show you what truth is,
Yeah.
And so when...
They say, we're going to go worship our idols. You go, all right, we'll see you later.
When in Isaiah said that the truth will be a light to the Gentiles, how will it be a light to the Gentiles?
Because the Gentiles living in darkness, and so...
But how does it...
When they see something that's bright, they're going to be attracted to it.
How are they going to see it?
It's going to be shining.
Yeah. Well, the Apostle Paul wrote that you are an epistle that's known and read by all people.
Yeah.
So every time you walk down a sidewalk and you pass somebody, they're reading something into you, aren't they?
Yeah, that's the truth.
Even if you don't say anything to them, you may just walk right by them, but they still see something there. And
Paul also said you shine like stars in the universe.
So if you live as a true follower of the way, then somehow you're going to radiate a little bit of light that they'll see. And if they see it, it'll have an effect on them. Now, they may not receive it every time. They might not like it, but they'll still get it, won't they? To some way, they'll get some of that light. The Lord, whenever he went anywhere, you suppose he always radiated the light of God?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did they always receive what he had to say with him?
No, that's the opening volley of John's gospel, is that they don't receive
him. Came to his own rejected him.
Yeah.
They reject him because he didn't do the right thing?
No, they reject him because they'd rather live in darkness.
Yeah. That's what he told Nicodemus. Here's the indictment against. Light has come into the world, but men love darkness rather than light. So that's what they want. They want the darkness. That doesn't mean that nobody wants light. But that's when someone is charged against God, it's because they rejected the light. And they reject it because they'd rather have darkness. And of course, that's another parable, light and darkness. Is there something evil about nighttime?
No. It even says that the Lord occupies darkness.
It's just the rotation of the earth relative to the sun is what makes it day or night.
That's right.
Nothing evil about night, nothing particularly good about daytime. It's just the way it works. But it symbolizes light represents righteousness and things that are correct and true. Darkness represents evil, that's all. And it's strange how there's more crime committed at night than there is in the daytime, isn't it? Why?
Because people that are doing it don't want to be seen.
Yeah, you can hide better at night. And it may be that there may be even something psychological about it. It may be that daylight gives people a better attitude than darkness does.
Yeah.
And they tend to do things more positively, but certainly it's a picture of truth is represented by light. Darkness represents false things.